Good day, and welcome to our Ransford's Weekly Wraps. I'm Viv Govender, and as usual, start off with some macro general markets news and end up with a tech segment. So, in our macro news this week, we've got US inflation, we have the collapsing oil price, and then we're going to look at a bit of politics, basically what's happening with regards to the GNU and the latest political debate in the US. Then we're looking at, in the tech segment, a couple of things. Firstly, Nvidia's recovery, and then at Strawberry, which is the latest model or some kind of protocol being released by OpenAI. So let's start off with the news around politics. This week we had a debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. It was originally meant to be a debate between Trump and Biden, but obviously with Biden dropping out, Harris took up the space. And by all estimates, I think Kamala Harris won. It's a pretty low bar to beat Trump if you're a normal person in a debate. He rambles. He's not very, methodical about, basically his talking points. And he doesn't prepare a lot. He's not exactly a guy that prepares a great deal. And Harris basically managed to, rope him in to talk more about the stuff that she wanted him to talk about, got into arguments about things like abortion, etc., and managed to keep him away from things that she does not want to talk about, like her previous record with regards to, some really liberal policies that she had, promoted when she was running for the Democratic nomination back in 2019. So, most estimates, she won. The question is, will this make a difference? Prior to this particular debate, the best pollsters out there were putting Trump at probably, a 60-40, say a 3-2 favorite against Harris, maybe a 55-45, so maybe it's slightly less than a 3-2 favorite against Harris. That's about a slight edge. Overall, she was basically coming through as probably winning the overall number of votes, but because of the way the US system works, you have to win specific states. And in a very important state, Pennsylvania, she was looking like she was probably going to lose that. And whoever wins Pennsylvania this time around is 90% plus certain to win the election. So you can watch that on election night. Whoever wins Pennsylvania, you can pretty much take a solid bet is going to win the election. And this particular debate, like I said, positive for her. So positive, in fact, that Trump is not going to do any other debates. She now wants to do more debates, but he does not. It remains to be seen. Maybe his polls fall enough that he might want to change his mind. But if that does happen, I think she'll probably pull out or do something to basically get out of the next debate. I mean, who wants to give a chance to the opponent to catch up? Doesn't make sense. So we are not going to have another debate, I think, between Trump and Harris. The next thing is, what's the outcome for the election? Like I said, people often point to the fact that the Biden debate caused him to, or the Biden's last debate caused him to drop out. That's not quite true. The fact that debate was very, very, very bad. Trump lost, but did not lose by as much as Biden lost that last debate. So if you had to judge it fairly, Trump lost, but Biden was basically shown to be incompetent. It's like one thing to basically go on the field and lose like a rugby match, like say 30-20 or something. Another thing to go on the field and lose a match 100-0. That's kind of what the last thing was. And the second thing is that after that particular event, he still basically managed to keep reasonably high in the polls until multiple, things came out afterwards that showed that he was not basically mentally capable of being president anymore. And that eventually caused him to drop out. Despite what people may say about the debates, not that many people watch it. And I don't think there's that many people that are undecided. If they are undecided, quite frankly, their exposure to things like debates are quite limited. Usually people that are undecided are very low information voters. So let's see what happens going forward. One weird thing to point out is that one of the big talking points about in the debate was whether or not Haitians, people from Haiti, were eating cats and geese in the US. Just to show the level of political discourse in the US, it's quite low at the moment. Then locally, I think there's some tensions increasing in the GNU, the Government of National Unity. We've seen, for instance, a couple of things. The NHI, the new basic education amendment that's looking to come through with regards to reducing the power of school governing bodies. We're also seeing, of course, some movements with regards to certain kinds of ministers and what they've been doing in terms of There's questions about Steenhuisen, John Steenhuisen from the DA and some of the people he's hired. There's questions about some people in the ANC and some of the moves that they've made in terms of, through this past tenders and so on, and relationships with, institutions that are found to be fraudulent, etc. So I think at the moment, the South African political system is still in a flux. The best outcome for the South African market is the GNU continues. And it was even major things like the National Health Initiative, like we talked about, or the new, basic education amendment. Those things, even though they're significant, I mean, how you treat your sick and how you educate your kids are some of the most important things the government does. I think still overall it would be better for the overall country if somehow this GNU can stick together. Right now it does seem that this is something that both the DA and the ANC considers to be important to stick together. I think that is probably going to hold things stable for a while. And by the way, it is the DA and the ANC that matters here. The other parties are not important with regards to the GNU, quite frankly. So tensions there, but still holding steady. One thing to be worried about, if it does break up, I mean, we will see a massive reversal, I think, in the round, a massive reversal in the economy, in the market as well. The market really wants the GNU to continue. Next, inflation. So we are looking at the US inflation numbers that have come out, showing a fall 2.5%. The only negative there was the fact that we are still seeing core inflation, which inflation without some of the volatile aspects still remaining reasonably high. And what that meant was that we were going to get a 0.25% cut this month. There was hope that if the overall number was very good, we would get a 0.5% cut. And the market basically took the fact that the numbers were not as good as they had thought as an indication we're not going to get that 0.5% cut. And without the 0.5% cut, some of the positivity in the market disappeared. So initially the market fell significantly, over 1% in the US. We saw the round do a little worse. The dollar strengthened a bit. But then in the day, markets turned around. And I'll talk about that when it comes to Nvidia. But we saw a massive rally in Nvidia coming through. 8%. And for a stock that's pretty much $3 trillion, 8% is a lot of money. We're talking like an equivalent amount of money in that day. As to some of like the large companies in the world, like because of McDonald's or something, it's like, that kind of range of billions of dollars. So, Nvidia kind of had like a major, well-known company in one day just in that rally. This came after last week, where it basically, dropped by, more than that, in fact, and, caused quite significant, negativity in the market. So, Nvidia rallies up significantly. I'll talk about it in the tech segment. We also saw a lot of the tech stocks go up as well later in the day, and that kind of turned the market around, and we ended the day positive in the US. I do think that the market's going to be a little bit volatile about some of these economic numbers, some of these, expectations on rate cuts, etc. But the trend is in one direction. We are going to be cutting rates going forward. It's going to be, the rate cuts going to happen over, say 10 or maybe 12 or whoever knows how many periods. Who knows? But it's definitely going to happen. And the size of the cuts as well. It may happen faster or slower than people want, but it's going to happen to around about the same amount that people were expecting it to happen. It's like the percentage and the amount of time taken is, pretty much known. But, just the speed of some of these things happening is the kind of the uncertainty. And I do think that to a certain extent, the market's overreacting around that. I don't think going 0.5% versus going 0.25% in the next rate cut decision makes enough of a difference to justify the market falling a few percent. It will have no long-term effect on stock prices. It will have no long-term effect on the profitability or the profitability of companies or the ability of consumers to spend money. So yeah, I think that is a bit of a reaction. And then finally, looking at Europe and the rate decision, the ECB is cutting its interest rates. To be expected, inflation's under control to a large extent. We are seeing oil prices come down dramatically. Brent crude touched like $70 a barrel, and I do think that is basically mostly due to the lack of demand out there. If you look at all the supply factors, they would normally indicate that we probably should be looking at a rising or at least a stable oil price. But what's really been happening is that there's fears about the fact that the Central Reserve of the US Federal Reserve, has not basically gone out strong enough and early enough in terms of rate cuts, and we may be tipping towards a US recession. There's fears around China and some of their economic numbers that come out recently. There's definitely fears around Europe. I mean, we saw recent news that Volkswagen is looking to close factories in Germany. If you know anything about the Volkswagen's import in Germany and the way the German corporate system works with the unions on the board, etc., it's very difficult to see how the fact that they're cutting, jobs in Germany is anything but an indication that they're in serious trouble, and that the German economy is in serious trouble. So those factors together mean that demand is the issue with all, not supply. One thing I want to add, again, going back to politics, the US is probably releasing more oil from the inventories than they would normally. Why? Lowers the oil price, lowers the petrol price, the gasoline price in the US, makes consumers a bit happier. Ahead of the election, that's not a bad thing to do if you are in charge of oil supply and you want to basically get elected as president. And so I seriously suspect that we might see a reversal in some of these inventory releases after the election. But until the election, I think the US is probably going to be looking at supplying as much oil as they can to the market from their reserves. Then, with regards to the European economy overall, I do think that we are seeing the first signs that the Europeans are starting to recognize just how bad a shape they are in. We had Mario Draghi being appointed by the EU Parliament to go out there and have a look at how to reverse some of the doldrums in the EU economy. He came up with a plan. He identified all the real problems. He's talked about the fact that regulation is too high, that there is not enough entrepreneurship, that there's not enough coordination. Even though they say it's the European Union, there's not enough unity in terms of regulation between various countries. Often what happens is the EU has a regulation, a country has a regulation, the company has to follow both regulations to function. Instead of just following an EU regulation across the entire EU, they follow EU regulation across the entire EU, but then also follow a separate country regulation, which is obviously making things more difficult. They talked about the fact that they are not seeing enough activity in new sectors for towards Europe, like things like AI and so on. And that again comes back to regulation for that period. The EU is in many ways as wealthy as the US and definitely as educated as the US. But in terms of a lot of tech and knowledge jobs, they just don't seem to be able to compete against the US. And part of the reason is, I think, to do with the regulations that they have, especially local and EU regulation overall. Also, the EU tends to regulate before a problem comes about. The US tends to regulate after there's a problem. And that kind of philosophy allows US companies to actually start up and get running and then having new regulations later. Whereas in the EU, you don't get the start, and therefore you're left behind. So he identified the problems quite clearly. The problem is his solutions were not great. Comes back to more government intervention. And that does not seem to be the problem with the EU. In fact, if they could have reduced government intervention, it would probably be better. But he wants to spend, I think, 800 billion euros to try and reverse these things. And a lot of it is going to go to the same kind of problems, the same kind of issues that caused the trouble in the first place. Okay, moving on to our tech segment. So firstly, starting off with Nvidia. Nvidia, like I said, 8% rally. Comes after Jensen Huang says that he's getting such demand for his products, he gets emotional. Nvidia remains the kingpin of this AI economy. Scaling still remains the de facto philosophy out there. Though we have seen Sergey Brin come out and say, from his experience, that obviously Google still has, or Alphabet still has, one of the best, if not the best, frontier team in terms of AI researchers out there with DeepMind. They are saying that they are seeing as much, if not more, progress on algorithms, the software side, as they are on the hardware side. If that is the case, then some of these timelines people have around AI might be accelerated, because a lot of that is just built on the idea that hardware is going to increase and spending is going to increase. But if you're also improving software at the same time, you're talking about maybe there's a 2 or 3% times increase in software, but there's a 2 or 3 times increase in hardware and a 2 or 3 times increase in the amount being spent. 2 or 3 times 2 or 3 times 2 or 3, and you're getting to some seriously large numbers. Then you're talking about between 8 and 20 times faster. So yeah, it's a big I think source of demand for Nvidia is going to be the AI sector. A lot of their demand comes from mystery customers, but we can't know who they are. And speaking of these big customers, Tesla has come out. Elon Musk has come out, not Tesla. Elon Musk has come out with his XAI, supercomputer, which by a lot of measures, is the most powerful computer ever created. And the fact that they got it up and running in a few months is amazing. And the talk about the amount of computing power here is quite spectacular. I know many people don't like Musk and don't like some of the stuff he does, but if I was to bet on anyone in the AI segment, I would have him either number one or number two or number three, like in the top three definitely of companies that's going to succeed in that segment. Not only was he a founding investor in places like DeepMind, he also helped start OpenAI, but his approach to these kind of things is often, like I said, with the US philosophy, do stuff and ask for permission later. And that seems to be what he's doing. He's accelerating as fast as he can. If there's something breaks, he'll come back and fix it later. Whereas if you look at, like, for instance, Google, they've had problems where they've had to slow things down because, regulations or internal safety issues have caused them to be a bit safer than they maybe otherwise could have been. And that's obviously, better, obviously, in the long-term product, maybe. But in terms of the speed at which they get there, definitely slows them down. And so the fact that, Musk is really bringing the same philosophy that got him SpaceX ahead of Boeing, got him Tesla ahead of things like Volkswagen and Toyota, I don't doubt that he's going to be able to really push XAI to do at least as well, if not better, than many of these established AI companies out there, if you can call things like OpenAI established. So demand is still strong with Nvidia. We've seen the rally come up again. We've also seen the rally of all the other tech companies in the sector, like Microsoft, Tesla, also doing reasonably well in the last day. So demand is still there. Next thing, Strawberry. Now, the weird thing about the tech segment is that people often come up with these weird names for whatever reason about different things. And so they'll have things like ChatGPT or Grok or, Claude or whatever the name is for, you want to have for, LLMs. They'll call things like the cloud. Think about it. Why is it called the cloud? They make up these little weird kind of acronyms, weird kind of like naming structures. Well, the new thing that they are looking at now is something called Strawberry, which is a new methodology, a new kind of system created by OpenAI, which apparently is significantly smarter than previous models. And they're set to release that in the next couple of weeks. This, I think, is going to be one of the bigger releases we are seeing from any digital AI company, or will be seeing from any AI company next month or so. Why? Because this is the first time we are seeing new tech coming into play. We've seen kind of like the old stuff just being proved a little bit, but now we're seeing a new kind of functionality coming into play that wasn't openly available to the public before. And we're going to see whether or not what Sergey Brin said about software really running ahead, algorithms running ahead, is true or not. If it is, forget about like worrying about 10 years into the future. We could be seeing AI significantly impacting lives in the next couple of years. But yeah, let's just see what Strawberry looks like. It's going to be out in a few weeks' time. And I think, combined with the fact that we are likely to see, Grok 3 coming out, we're likely to see GPT-5, the next Claude, the next Llama versions coming out probably by the first couple of months of next year, if not by the end of this year. We're probably going to go through a period of real, significant releases for AI. In fact, I would say that the last, say, 3 to 6 months have probably been a pretty quiet period in terms of AI releases. And expect that to change, like I said, the next month or two. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to speaking again next week. Cheers.